Okay, I'm going to start the recording. Mary's coming in.
Yay.
Hi, Mary.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, thank you all for coming in early. That means we can start early. Yay.
Yay. And no technical difficulties this time.
No,
Yay.
no, we seem to be, you all seem to be doing very well. Yeah. Okay, so what was hard about the homework? Challenging.
Well, okay, so for me, I don't have a tripod, so finding a stool and then finding another stool to put the camera on that would give me a decent shot, that was hard.
Uh-huh.
Plus, everything is dead in my backyard. So finding a decent background, even though like it doesn't always matter, but finding something that would kind of work, yeah, but yeah. Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Mine was definitely not a decent background. Mine is my AC unit.
Oh,
Yeah, see it.
I had
Okay.
issues with the running water. I feel so dumb because I'm sure I know it was user error and I'm sure it's something simple, but the higher the shutter speed I went, my aperture only got to like 32 and it just kept getting brighter and brighter. And if you saw them, they were white. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
No, I had the same thing, Lori. So I couldn't do the last like 3 numbers. I had the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you don't have enough light, then there's nothing you can do. You can't go to those numbers. Doesn't do you any good. Yeah.
That makes me feel a little better.
What'd you have, Paula? What was your challenge?
Well, I didn't have a tripod. I mean, my camera equipment is borrowed, so I was kind of limited. But I went to visit a friend on Friday who had a tripod. And so she let me use her tripod and we set up there. But it was a very gloomy day.
Mm-hmm.
So that really, when we went to do the waterfall outside, by the time we walked into where it was 3 p.m. So that presented some problems.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have access to a flash. We did try with the reflector. We tried to do that. But it was interesting and fun, and I learned a lot.
Good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't do a
Paula went
stool.
on ahead to the second assignment. Yeah.
I didn't do a stool or a tripod. I just held it and it's not in the same position. And I'm okay with that. And I just went about my business.
Well, that's okay. And, let me show you all what you did. And thank you all for doing the homework assignment because I really do appreciate it. It makes me feel good as a teacher. And everybody can see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so what you're seeing right now is you're seeing Bridge. Everybody knows about Adobe Lightroom and Adobe Photoshop, but Adobe also makes this other product called Bridge and Adobe Camera Raw. This is what I use. I just happen to find it a whole lot easier than using Lightroom. So I'm going to open all of your photos up and they will open in just a second. And when you're ready to start learning how to process your photos, then I have a class called the Introduction to the Adobe Products, and I'll teach you how to do it. Okay. Okay, so let me see. Angie, first time?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
This is me.
This is you. Okay. And first of all, you got to learn how to turn that off.
Yes, I've got to research some more. I cannot figure out where that is. I've tried several different places, but yes.
So this is, and by the way, right here in this little corner where you see the cursor going around right now, here's your f-stop and here's your shutter speed. So the shutter speed is 640 here and the f-stop is 4.5. So can y'all see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when I'm referring to it, this is the zoom lens she's using. This is your ISO. So you can see her settings right there for that one. Okay. So on this one, this is your aperture, and this started with your 4.5, but if you notice, nothing's in focus.
Yep.
Yeah. So you've got to make sure you got a confirmation on your focus point. So that's one of the, here's a little dog right over there. So you got to, yeah. So you got to make sure that we've got it. And then here you go from 4.5, starting out at 640. And here's you're at 4.5 again, but nothing's in focus. What was the challenge with getting the focus?
The focus, so on the camera, it's the big knob turns and it changes, it actually changes the aperture, but then there's a fine focus on the very far end of the lens, and I keep hitting, yeah, it's plus the struggle of putting this and looking at it through a stool that's not tall enough for, it was a
All
challenge.
that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. We'll get on track here. So this is 5.6. And once again, we don't have focus point here. Also remember that every lens has a minimum focusing distance. So every lens has a point where it starts to focus. And on that 18 to 55, it's 0.9 inches. So
Okay.
if you're closer than that, it won't focus. So you've
Okay.
always got to make sure you know what your minimum focus distance is on every lens. Looks like to me, it looks like you're a little on the close side.
Yeah, I'm too close. Okay.
Yeah. And then here we're at 6.3 at 250, but you notice how the exposure has been the same. So you're
Yes.
balancing your light meter. We got a problem with the focus, but we're balancing the light meter. And then here it's the same thing. And now you're finally in focus. Yeah. 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 So F11, and we're still maintaining, there's a little dog back there in the bushes there, back in the back.
Yeah.
So we're still maintaining the exposure, 16 60th of a second. So we're still maintaining the exposure. So you're doing good. You know, you might have missed out on those first ones, but this one's, you're doing good. And then here we're at F22, and you notice that at F22, 22 things are in focus. So
Yep.
here we can see from the plant all the way to the neighbor's roof
Right.
is in focus. So start out a little slow there, but you got it. Yeah. And then here you see that you kind of pulled in and moved things around just a little bit. Yeah.
So in order for my camera to actually get to the F32, I have to definitely change the big focus, and that's when it was like, oh, I'm zoomed in now, and I'm getting, yeah, yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you started, let me see, when you're zoomed out, so at 18 millimeters, that's the one where you should be able to get the 32.
Right. But right. You're right.
Yeah. 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 And then here we go to 45 millimeters, and you've got the 32 on this one. But I'm just proud of you because those ones up above, you kept all your exposure going.
Thank you.
So you did it. You did it. And then here's your waterfall.
Yes.
So we've got the waterfall. And this happened to be on a very bright day,
Yes, it was.
which is going to be difficult to get a slow shutter speed on a really bright day because we've got so much light.
Right.
But you started out at F32, you did fine, and you've got a 15th of a second, and you're blurring your water. So you're doing a good job. And then F32, and you tried to go to an 1/8 of a second, but notice the exposure now
Yep.
changed. And the
Yes.
same thing here, it's too bright.
Right. The water was, it looked cool because it was
Uh-huh.
smoky, but
Mhm.
yeah, it was, that's a terrible picture.
Yeah, yeah, because it's way too overexposed.
Yes.
And so if that scale's not right in the middle, unless your histogram has told you you need to, like that white cat I photographed last week, then that scale's always going to be right in the middle
Right.
because there's just too much light. But then
Yeah.
you got your act together again, 29 at 30th of a second, and you see how we've got the blurry water. And then 60th of a second, F20, and you've got your balancing your light meter because now our exposures are all the same. And then here, 1/25th of a second at F14. And then here, look how much splash there is.
A lot.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah. And you've got your meter balance because all these last ones have been exactly the same. So you're doing a good job. And then this last one is at 500th of a second. Look how much splash there is.
A lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So you did a good job.
Thank
And then you
you.
went digging in the bushes for a subject.
That's fish stick. Yep.
Yeah. There you go. And you finally got this last one that looks good. But notice how we got the background blurred out.
Right.
Okay. So you're showing that f-stop again. And then all of these are exactly the same, but I don't see any change in your settings at all. 5, 6,
was-
125.
Yeah, I was trying to do the reflection with the foil, and I don't
Oh.
know if I was in the wrong place or if I just wasn't positioning it correctly, or I just wasn't, there wasn't a lot of change, but I was like, well, let me take some pictures and see what she says.
I gotcha. I gotcha. So you're trying to do the reflection.
Yes.
Yeah. And between here and here, you can see that it's not lit up as much.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it did do something. It just wasn't necessarily the best object or the best placement.
Exactly. 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 But you've got a nice soft background and your exposure stayed the same throughout each one of those. So you're doing good job.
Nice, thank you.
Good job. Good job. Okay, Lori, here's yours. And yes, you were not balancing your light meter.
No.
And could you, let me see, we're at 32 at F4 and there was just way too much light. So your light meter
Yeah.
wasn't even in the center, right?
No, I kept trying to get it in the center and like play with the aperture, and it was not getting there. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I know I'm doing something wrong here.
Yeah. And notice also you've got an ISO 400. So if you would have brought that ISO down to 100, it would have given you a little bit more wiggle room.
That's what I was wondering. I was like, I
Yeah.
wonder if it's something in the ISO.
Yeah. 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 Because it's just too bright for you to
Yeah.
get F32. There's just too much sun.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you finally get your exposure here. So finally got your light meter going in the middle.
Yeah.
And you got 32 at a 40th of a second, 29 at a 60th of a second. So you're working through the scale now. And then you zoomed, unfortunately. So that kind of put things back to 32.
I couldn't get a hot, like I had to put the different lens on because I was noticing I couldn't get a higher aperture until I changed my lens.
Oh,
I couldn't get to 32 without like the big long lens on.
yeah. This 18, but see the 18 to 55, it'll go to 32.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, no, see, okay. I see what you're doing. Okay. I see what you're doing. Yeah. So you're playing around with that lens because that 18 to 55 will go to 32.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's do your air conditioner. Let's do Willie on the air conditioner.
My little planner.
You know, we got to work with whatever we've got. Yeah. So you've got, and this is no tripod. So a little bit of moving around. So this is a 4.5 and you see how we've got the blurred background there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good job. And then this is 7.1 and we'll use this plug as a benchmark so that we can see it just a little bit more. And here's 5.6. I should have put these in order for you. And here's 8, but you lost your exposure just a little bit on that one.
Yeah.
Here's your 7.1 again. So you've got a good exposure. See these up in here, we're going good. So as long as you can change those numbers, here you're at F11, good. Look how we can see the electrical outlet. But you still got the same exposure as the one above it. So that says, okay, we're balancing our light meters and, you know, moving them around. And then here it's at F16 and you can really now see the electrical outlet there. And then 22, yay, congratulations, you did it. Yeah.
For being sick, I did okay.
You did okay, exactly, exactly. So, you know, you can see that depth of field compared to when you first started. So you can see how much the background blurs with just that small distance too, because you didn't use a big distance either.
Yeah.
Good job. Good job.
Thank you.
Whoops. Mary, this is yours?
Yep.
Okay. So F4.5 and 500, and notice all the pictures have the same light, the same exposure. So that tells me that you did a really good job on that one. So we've got 4.5 at 500, and then the second one, 4.5 at 500. So they're essentially the same.
Yeah,
Whoops.
some were duplicated, and then like I said, I forgot which ones I duplicated, but I
Oh, there we go. Now you're getting on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those first 5 are the same ones.
yeah.
So we go from 4.5 to 500. Good. And then 5 to 400. Good. And then 5 to 400, we got a duplicate in there. 5 to 400, we got a duplicate in there again. 5 to 400. Whoops, whoops, whoops.
Yeah.
There. Should have cleaned that for you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I put that in
6.3.
the email that, because I didn't have this bridge and I uploaded them all before I removed, anyways, it's been a long week.
That's okay, because you're at 6.3 and 250, and the exposure's still the same. So that means you're balancing your light meter like you should. And then that's a duplicate. There we go. F8, 1/60th. So you're balancing your light meter like you should. And then the same thing when we go here, 11 and 80. Good. And 16 and 30. So your exposures are all the same, even though you're changing your f-stop and your shutter speed. Now, we're not noticing any change from in the background. You got a little bit here. No, we're not noticing much change at all because you're not focused super close. So it's so noticeable is when you're focused really close. So this is one where you should have gotten closer to that little
Okay.
figurine there. But you got your exposure right, which is good. So congratulations on that one. And then you just nailed it on this water. Yeah. So this is 550th at F5. And you see you've got all these beautiful little water drops all throughout there.
And there's also some duplicates here, so
Yeah.
yeah.
And then here you're at 250. So these are starting to blur just a little bit more. And then here you are at 125. So we're starting to blur. I think I can do this. Yeah. See how the water is forming nice balls throughout there, but then come down here to where it's 250 and you see that it's starting to blur out. So you're illustrating that point really, really well. And then here you are at 125. Congratulations. Exposure staying exactly the same. And then here you are at 60. And then little duplicate at 60. And then here you are at 30th of a second. And look how much blur is in that water. But
And
still maintaining the exposure all the way.
And this next one, that's when it was too bright. I couldn't change my light meter any longer. My camera wouldn't let me do it any longer.
Yeah. It wouldn't go anymore. Yeah.
So it's very bright.
And you've got that bridge camera. So when you were zoomed at 30 millimeters, it wouldn't let you go anything past 16. Yeah. But you kept the exposure all the way through. So you did a really good job, really fine job on that one. So congratulations. Okay, let me see. And then, okay, Paula, on yours. So the reflectors come a little later, right? These aren't reflectors. Yeah.
No, these aren't reflectors.
So you've got 4.5 at a 40th of a second. So notice how pure this background is back there. So that background has got just a really, really nice look to it. The quality of the background, by the way, is called bokeh. And I'll show you some more examples of this. But Paula, this lens that your son-in-law let you borrow is a really, really nice lens. So it gets this really pure bokeh back here. So notice all of these have the same exposure. Yeah, all of these have the same exposure. So we're starting at the 4.5. There you go, 5.6, 7.1. Everything's doing just fine. 8, and then 11. And then we come in at 16, and now we can finally almost read that sign in the back. And now we come in at 22. So you maintained your exposure all the way through. Congratulations on that one.
That's an amazing example, actually. That
Uh-huh.
was
Really good
beautiful.
job.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was awesome.
Yeah, isn't it? It's just a really good example when when you can get them all in that series, and then you can really see how much difference that blown out background makes. And then this is where you were playing with the reflector, and you can see on this one, because we've got the side light coming in here. And then if you hold the reflector over here, it moves the side light onto this side right here. But here, see how pretty
Wow.
that is?
That's amazing.
And see how
Good
pretty that
job.
is? Yeah. See, blocking the window.
Wow.
It was like 35 degrees and it was raining. So like
Yeah.
at that point we couldn't go out.
Yeah.
We did brave it for the waterfall after, but we waited, I think, too long in the afternoon and, just couldn't.
Uh-huh. It's a really good
couldn't let-
example of how pretty that reflected light is. Yeah. And then here's your waterfall. And I looked at this and I thought, who's got snow? And then I remembered you were up there. Yeah.
I'm
So
telling you, I
way
haven't seen
to,
the sunshine since I saw you last.
oh,
It's so
wow.
gray and rainy or snowy.
Wow. 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 And it's just been magnificent down here for the last few days. So here you couldn't balance the light meter with 500. So it was underexposed. And then here, the same thing, can't quite get it, the light meter balanced. But then here at 125, yeah, the light meter balances. So we've got to put that scale right in the middle. And then, so F4 125 and then F4 160, you see how that's a little brighter. And so it's probably showing a little bit overexposed. If not, was it properly exposed now, Paula?
I think I mean I did try and match it up,
Yeah.
but it is with the snow and the rock and the waterfall. I think there were a lot of things that could be distracting.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that might have factored into it, that big clump of snow on the left. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, we've got, it looks like F4 and 60. Yeah, I think this is where you finally started to balance right here, F4 and 60. And
Yeah, I was
then,
aware I wasn't able to do it, but
Uh-huh.
I didn't know what else to do. I mean, I didn't play with the ISO, but would that have been a way I could have compensated? Is there any way I could have compensated?
that would have given you a faster shutter speed. So the ISO, raising the ISO would have given you a faster shutter speed. And what we needed here was a slower shutter speed
Okay,
because it
so
was
that
so
wouldn't have helped.
overcast. Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't
Yeah,
have helped then.
wouldn't have
Okay.
helped really. So
Okay.
here's your F4 at 60, but notice that we're keeping the same exposure, but now it's 30, so the water's blurring. And then we get to 15, same exposure, so you're doing a great job there. And now we're getting to where we're at that 1/8 of a second. So now we're getting into that really, really nice water. And it's streaking up here as well. And then we're getting some really nice streaks in here. So you're doing a good job. And still even going more because you got all the way down to 1/4 a second with the meter being balanced. Yeah. So dynamite, good job. Very, very good job. Yeah.
Thank you.
Questions on those?
It was fun. I actually enjoyed it. I stressed out about it, but it was fun.
Yeah, I'd never used any of those settings before. I'd never used shutter speed or anything. And so when I was doing it, I was like, boy, I really learned a lot in 2 hours. So I was,
Yes.
bravo.
Yes, yes. It is amazing how much you learn in that very, very short period of time. And every time you go out, by the way, and play and do an exercise like this, you're going to find that you learn things.
Mhm.
So the playing is good. Yeah, Paula.
Could you talk about ISO a little more? Because it seemed like some of us used it. I didn't, but I noticed some people had fairly high ISOs when they took their shots.
Yeah.
So what's the story behind that, or how does
So-
it factor in?
I think, Laura, yours was just accident that you were at 400 ISO,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It wasn't an intentional.
No,
I
no.
set mine
Yeah.
at 400 on purpose at one point, and it was just because I was having such a hard time getting enough light to focus a picture. But I thought maybe by increasing the ISO to 400 it would help, but it actually didn't. I probably didn't know what I was doing.
No.
So
So the ISO is the sensitivity on the sensor to light. The higher the ISO, the higher your shutter speed is going to be, and the lower light you can shoot in. So if you were photographing in your house right now and you wanted to make sure, like Angie's got that cat on the little cat tower behind her head. So if you wanted to make sure that you got that 60th of a second or 1/25th of a second to stop the cat from taking its bath, then you would need to be able to get to that 60 or 125th or 250th of a second. You might end up having to raise your ISO to 400 or 800. So when we're in a low light situation, say, Paula, like you were in that snow and toward the afternoon, when we're in a low light situation, if we need a faster shutter speed, then we would raise our ISO. But if we have a lot of light and we don't need the ISO to get us to a faster shutter speed, that's when we should lower our ISO. And that's why I had you all set at the 100 and the 200 so that we could get the 30th of a second, especially if it was sunshiny outside. So when I'm photographing birds, for instance, I need a fast shutter speed to stop their wings. And so I use a higher ISO to get that faster shutter speed.
So like what, since some of us like birds, so what ISO do you use when you're doing birds?
So can I get to that in just a second?
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
because I'll show you something and it might make a little sense to you. Okay. So anytime we need to stop movement, that's when we would think about raising our ISO. Landscape, for instance, we don't need to stop movement. Cameras on tripod, so that's when we would use a really low ISO and then just leave the camera on the tripod. Okay, does that help? Okay, we'll keep working on it. So the key is that light meter has to be in the middle. If the light meter is not in the middle, even if the assignment said try it, it's not going to work. You know, it's either going to be a dark picture or a light picture, depending on which way the light meter is going. In this case, the light meter is positive to the right and negative to the left. That's flipped in Nikon, by the way. Nikon does it completely opposite. Yes, if Canon does it one way, Nikon does it the other way. That's just the way those corporations work with each other. Yeah.
Right.
So if the light meter is not in the middle, then you know that that's either going to be a dark picture or a light picture. The only time we would photograph without the light meter in the middle is when your histogram, remember that, the graph, didn't go all the way over to the side, to the right, then we would overexpose. If it went to the side and it spiked up the right side, then we would underexpose. So the only time that we would shoot with the meter not balanced is when that histogram told us that we needed to not balance our light meter. Okay?
Yes.
Paula, you
Mhm.
good with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of information to kind of take in and try and picture I almost need a drawing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. It's a lot of information because there's a lot of things, because you've also got to pay attention to your shutter speed and you got to pay attention to your f-stop. Look at this example on the screen, for instance. The shutter speed is an eighth of a second. Can you photograph a hummingbird on a feeder at an eighth of a second?
Only if it's not moving, I guess. But I mean, I don't even think even then I've tried and it turns
Exactly.
out like a little bumblebee looking thing. Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
good.
Because remember, 60th of a second is your minimum for living creatures. So if this hummingbird is living, then I need at least a 60. So even
Yep.
though the meter's balanced right now, it's not working. And that's
Yep.
where you've still got to pay attention to those numbers. You got to, figure out which one needs to be changed. But that light meter for right now is the key for you all. You all watch that one, pay attention to that, and then working slowly again, making sure your shutter speed and your f-stop work. Okay. Another thing, and we saw this, I think, with Angie's little cactus. Angie, yours was the cactus, right?
Yes.
Yes. The little dot, the green dot is what confirms that you're in focus. And if you have those little bitty dots, this confirms that, okay, I am on this face right here, and I have a green dot right here, which is telling me you're in focus. So I've got these green squares right here and this green dot. That's my confirmation that we're in focus. I've got this black dot right here, and then I've got the green dot down here. That's confirming that we're in focus. You see it in there, Mary?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. You pay attention to that little confirmation. So it's different colors now. It's orange, it's blue. In my latest Canon RFs, they're blue. It's a little blue square, but that little green dot, usually inside your viewfinder somewhere, is telling you, I found it, I'm in focus. And if it's blinking at you, sometimes it depends on what you've got your camera set for, but we're checking that dot, okay? As a confirmation
I've
of
never
where we're
even
going.
noticed that dot before.
Yeah, there's
I
all
saw
kinds
it,
of good
it
stuff in
flashes.
there.
Yeah, it'll flash at me and then it's steady and I'm like, okay, that's good. And then
Yeah, yep, exactly, exactly. Okay, so were there any problems on the backs of your cameras? So this is the Lori's, right? Yeah, this is
Yeah.
Lori's, the Rebel. Were you good on your controls and your buttons and everything?
Yeah.
Okay, good, good. I'm just kind of doing this one more time. Angie, on your Nikon, you were good on your controls and your buttons?
yeah, the only thing that ever flashed at me was well, there's a little question mark that will come up sometimes, and I think that that's to say a question mark with the flash signal, like saying maybe I didn't have enough light. Do I want to
Yeah.
turn on the flash? And then the green focus button would flash at me.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, yep.
Yeah. And something on this camera also that you've got to watch out for, Angie, is this Nikon is, I call it a worry wart camera. Sometimes it'll tell you in the viewfinder, too dark, too dark, too dark, and the meter's balanced. Everything's
Yes.
okay, but it'll
Okay.
still tell you too dark, too dark. And it's like, you are just a worry wart. Go away.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah. Ignore it. As long as the light meter's balanced, you're okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me see. Paula, anything on yours?
No, I used the front wheel for the f-stop and the rear wheel for the shutter speed,
Okay.
and I didn't mess with the ISO, so I was able to manage.
Good. Good. And then you're okay on that. And anything on yours, Mary?
No, I was good. I
Good.
will say that I tried to I was walking in the forest and I was trying to take a picture of a dove on the ground in the leaf litter with sunlight streaming through the pine trees, and the dove was walking and it was going in and out of the sunlight, and trying to get the light meter and the f-stop and the I mean, I'm like, oh my gosh.
It's
I
already
don't
flown off by the time you get it.
I don't know. I mean, that was because it's a brown dove on brown leaf in a dappled forest. I'm like, oh, I don't even know how you get this picture. But it was, yeah, it much more difficult than my stationary object.
Yes. Good. Y'all are good. Okay. So right now I have got you on the manual mode. You're in charge of the f-stop. You're in charge of the shutter speed. You're in charge of the ISO. We're still on autofocus, so you can use your autofocus. But as you've already alluded to, Mary was just about there. By the time you get the f-stop in there and the shutter speed in there and the exposure compensation if you need to, and you're trying to get the subject focused, I mean, the bird's flown off, or your kid's grown by the time you're finished with this stuff. So it does take you a long time. It's simply because you have to get your hands moving in the right direction. You have to get your brain moving in the right direction. And so I've taught you the manual mode, and any students that I've had over the years who've learned the manual mode, they say, I'm so glad you taught me the manual mode because now I understand it. As you progress, I would like you to move out of the manual mode and move into the other non-automated modes. So I want to teach you about the manual mode, the shutter priority mode, and the aperture priority mode, and the advantages to using those. I don't want you to make the change now, except for class. But I do want you to think about if you work on this camera and feel real comfortable with this camera in a month, then feel free to start trying to work in the aperture priority mode or the shutter priority mode. I rarely shoot in the manual mode. I do it occasionally when I'm working on something very complicated, but most of the time I'm in aperture priority or shutter priority. So pick your camera up if you would. And you all are still in the manual mode, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Is your f-stop at 5.6?
Yep.
Yes.
Everybody at 5.6?
Yep.
And everybody except Angie is at ISO 100.
Yep.
Okay, and that's because Angie's camera is its baseline best ISO is 200 because Canon set theirs at 100, so Nikon set theirs at 200. So that's just the way it is. They've always been competitors like that. Okay, so in the manual mode, point your camera at something in your room, and with your f-stop at 5.6, then dial your shutter speed until your light meter goes right in the middle, and then tell me what your shutter speed is and click the picture. Just yell
125th.
125th. Good.
125.
Good.
Mhm.
Just yell it out. What's your shutter speed when your scale goes right in the middle?
Must be too dark because I can't get my shutter speed to give me a balance. It says everything's too, I don't have enough light.
So it's going to be real slow then. It's going to be probably someplace where you've got the quotation marks.
There we go. Okay. Yep. You're right.
Same.
What's your,
1/6.
1/6? Good, Mary?
Mine's 2 quotes.
2 quote. Okay, 2 seconds. Good. Lori, what's yours?
Still trying to find. I'm at 2.5.
Because your because your room's really dark.
Dark in here.
Yeah.
No, calm down.
Point it back at the light at that lamp behind you, Lori. Yeah, there you go.
I also have the big lens on. I don't know if that matters.
Okay. Okay. So
1/6.
you see that you're getting a fairly slow shutter speed. Okay. Now that's just because the light that you have in your
my
room, that's
God.
all there is to it. You got that slow shutter speed.
My lens cap is still on. That's why.
Oh, yes.
Gosh.
That happens. You did it in class, luckily, so you didn't do it in public. Yeah, you're
Oh, I
good.
also did it when I tried to shoot the water.
Good. Okay, now balance your light meter for me, Lori. Catch up with us.
Should I go?
It's a slow shutter speed. You're going to be with
It's
quotation marks.
slow. I'm at 5 right now, and
Good.
it's still reading at 3.
Good.
Oh, it's going up now.
Yeah. Good.
Balance.
Good.
Isn't that cool? You didn't even know I could do
So at 30, I'm finally at 1. Now I'm on bulb.
Oh, okay. Wait a second.
Good
Wait a
bulb.
second. You're at 5.6?
Yeah,
5.6. Point your camera at the lamp behind you.
it's probably because it's what I'm pointing at is so dark.
I mean, that is so dark. And look through the viewfinder. Don't look at the back of the camera. Look through the viewfinder.
Okay.
Got it? Okay. Now, up on the top of your camera, you have an A or an AV, and you have a TV. So we have manual, and then we have an AV, and AV is for you Canon users. Everybody else is an A. You see the A? So
Yes.
rotate it to aperture priority. That's your A. Now, when you're in A or AV, Canon calls it, this is called aperture priority. You're in charge of the aperture, and the camera is balancing the light meter for you with the shutter speed. So pick your camera back up to your eyes and point it around the room, and you should now see the light meter right in the middle. And as you move it from dark areas and light areas in your room, you should see that the shutter speed is faster and the shutter speed is slower. Point it down at the floor and you'll see it's a slow shutter speed. Point it at a lamp and you'll see it's a faster shutter speed. Agree?
Yes, that's cool.
Yeah. Now, is everybody's light meter in the middle?
Yep.
Yes?
No,
No, who's not?
Paula.
Paula. Okay. So Paula, if your light meter is not in the middle, everybody else, are you in the middle?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Paula, if you're not in the middle, do you have a plus minus button on the top of the camera or a plus minus button on the back of the camera?
Um, I think you mean this thing?
Uh-huh. Little
Yeah.
plus minus button? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, you've got a dial, don't you?
I
Put
do.
put that right in the middle at 00.
Okay. I guess I don't know how that, or
Yeah, you have to watch that because that dial will get moved. You always want to make sure
okay,
it's
now it's at 0.
okay.
okay.
Now, did that take it back?
It
Good.
did. Now it's balanced.
Okay, good, good. And the same thing, Lori, when you're looking around, it's balanced?
Yeah.
Okay, good, good, good. And you notice that if you want to take pictures right now, I mean, it looks just like it does in this room. It's balancing the light meter for you, but you are choosing the f-stop. So aperture priority is what you would use if you knew exactly what f-stop you would need. So for instance, when the wildflowers start coming out, if I want to walk through a field of wildflowers, but I want all the wildflowers from the foreground all the way down to the end of the horizon to be in focus, then I would set my f-stop on 22 and use a tripod. So I would know that I needed everything in focus. And so now I don't really care what shutter speed I'm getting because I'm using a tripod. But if I want to walk through the field and I want to now do little portraits of wildflowers and I want the soft background behind them, then I'm going to set my f-stop on 4.5 or 5.6. And now I can just walk through the field and kneel down and get flat to the wildflower. And I can just photograph wildflowers with the blown out background to my heart's content. So if I know what f-stop I need, and it's not so important what shutter speed I have, then I can use aperture priority. Now let's go back to those portraits of those wildflowers. Maybe I choose an f4.5 for this nice little lupine that I'm going to photograph. But when I look through the viewfinder, if there's a little bit of a wind, then I can't just say I'm not going to pay attention to the shutter speed, because I have to pay attention to the shutter speed because the shutter has to stop the wildflower blowing in the breeze. See, so I still have to pay attention to those two numbers, but it's at least letting me see what the other number is. I don't have to go dialing for it. So that little portrait of that bluebonnet that's blowing in the breeze, if I have my 4.5 or my 5.6 so that the background is blurred, but I need a little bit more shutter speed than what it gives me, then that's where I've got an option of raising my ISO to give me a faster shutter speed. Or I've got an option, I can't really close down my aperture because that just makes less and less light. So then I could use my reflector or something like that to add some more light. But I somehow need to get a faster shutter speed because that bluebonnet's now blowing in the breeze. So that's aperture priority. Make sense?
Mhm.
Sort of? Okay, good. Stay at 5.6, please. And now rotate to S or TV. So shutter priority is your S, and Canon calls it timed value, TV. So TV or S. This is where you're in charge of the shutter speed. So point your camera at your wall or a lamp or something like that. And now, what numbers are showing through that viewfinder? We had 5.6 last time, but what numbers are showing through that viewfinder now?
13.
F11.
F11.
F11, 13 and F11. Is the light meter balanced?
Yep.
Yep.
I'm getting the same 5.6, 125.
5.6 at 125. Is your light meter balanced?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I'm
Because
looking at the same thing. Maybe that's why.
yeah, you're looking at the same thing. And that's okay because see, it's going to balance at 125th and 5 and you know, it's the same thing. So Lori, what are you seeing?
Oh, oops.
And what are you seeing, Mary?
125.
Huh?
Why shutter speed's at 125.
Okay. And is your light
One-
meter balanced?
It's just a tick to the right.
It's just a tiny bit to the right. And
Yeah.
what's your f-stop by the way?
It's 4.0.
4.0?
Yeah. I need to change it, but
Y-
I don't
Your
think I can change it in this setting, right?
your f-stop is 4.0?
Yeah,
What lens do you have on?
it's the big one.
No,
I
so
mean,
that lens doesn't have a 4.0 on it. Oh, I'm sorry, 4.0. I'm sorry, 4.0. I've temporary brain fog there. So you were 125th at 4.0, right?
yeah,
Okay, and it's just a slight bit off from balanced, right?
yeah.
Okay, go ahead and balance it for me, okay? Mary, what are you getting?
I'm at 1.6 and an f-stop of 4.5.
And an f-stop at 4.5. Is the light meter balanced?
Yep.
Good, good, good. Angie, what do you have?
Now I've got an f-stop of 7.1.
7.1. And what's your shutter speed?
5.
5. Okay,
Yeah.
a fifth of a second at 7.1.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good, good. Now, for everybody, if you have 2 dials, so I know Paula's got 2 dials. I think everybody else uses a plus minus to change their f-stop, correct?
I do. Yes.
Yeah. Lori and Mary,
I
yes?
use a dial.
Use a dial?
Yep.
Okay,
To
good.
change,
Lori,
yeah.
use
What
plus
was the
minus.
question?
You use plus minus to change your f-stop, right?
I hit the AV button and then I use this dial right
Yeah,
here.
yeah, the AV and the plus minus button. Yep, yep, yep. Okay, okay. So Angie and Lori now in shutter priority, your
Oh, yeah.
front dial changes your shutter speed. And so your front dial changes your shutter speed. And Paula and Mary in shutter priority, your regular dial changes your shutter speed, correct?
It's
Yep.
the back dial for me.
Your back dial for you. Okay, good, 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 good. Okay, okay. Mary, right?
Yep.
Okay, good. So put your shutter speed, please, on 1/25th.
Mhm.
Oh, let me see, 250. Put your shutter speed on 250.
Okay.
Everybody got 250?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, now look through there, and is your light meter balanced?
No.
Mine
No.
is.
No. Is the f-stop blinking at you?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Yes.
Yes. Mary?
Oh, I'm getting up to 250. Sorry. I was-
Okay.
Yeah, if my f-stop is yeah, it's blinking.
And the f-stop is blinking at you. Okay. In shutter priority, this is where you have to know what you're doing before you move over into these. In shutter priority, you can dial in any shutter speed you want. It'll try to balance your light meter for you. But if it can't balance your light meter, it'll blink the f-stop at you saying, I got a problem. Yeah, if you want me to take the picture, I'll go ahead and take the picture, but I sort of need some attention here. So it's blinking at you to try to get your attention to say, I can't use what they give you, 250?
Yep.
Yeah, I can't
Yep.
use 250. I don't have enough light. So it'll let you take the picture, but it's just saying, I don't have enough light to take this picture. So rotate your shutter speed dial slowly until your f-stop quits blinking at you. And what shutter speed do you get when your f-stop quits blinking at you? Rotate it slowly. Okay,
1/30th.
good. 1/30th of a second when you got an f4,
I
right?
went to f5.
F5. Okay, good, good. At 1/30th of a
1/30th,
second. That's when it stopped blinking. Everybody else, when did your f-stop quit blinking?
40.
40th of a second? Good, good, good. You must be looking at the
It looks like
computer.
it looks like mine stopped at 1/40th and I went past it.
Okay,
1/40th, 4.5.
good. 4.5, good. Angie and
Mine-
Mary,
Mine was 2.5.
2.5, two, 2.5,
Yeah, 2.5. Yeah.
2.5, 2.5 seconds. Okay, Angie, when did yours quit blinking?
2.5 seconds,
Two and
2.5.
a half.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Exactly.
I was doing my f-stop. I'm sorry. My shutter speed was 0.4.
Was a fourth of a second?
Yeah, 0.4 when it stopped blinking.
Okay, when it stopped blinking. Good, good, good. Okay, so shutter priority is when you know what shutter speed you need. So when you know what shutter speed you need, then that's when you would use shutter priority. So for instance, Mary, you asked me when I use auto ISO. So when I'm photographing birds, I'm in shutter priority. And this is a little hard to understand because it's kind of a foreign concept. I'm in shutter priority. I change the shutter speed based on what the bird is doing, how much action the bird has, and I leave the ISO at auto. So the ISO fluctuates to let me keep my f-stop as wide open as possible, and it lets me keep my shutter speed where I need it to be. So that's when we would use shutter priority, but it's a little complicated. So shutter priority is when I know good and well what shutter speed I need. So let's say, for instance, that I was going to go and photograph just the cats sitting around the house, and they're not playing or anything like that. They're just sitting around looking cute. So that would be a 60th of a second because that's the minimum we can use on a living, breathing creature. So I could walk around at shutter priority at a 60th of a second and photograph the cats, get down on eye level, photograph them, that type stuff. And I'm watching that f-stop always to see whether it'll either increase or decrease based on how much light I've got. So when I know how much shutter speed I actually need, then that's when I can use shutter priority. Make sense? But you've still got to watch that light meter to make sure that that f-stop doesn't start blinking at you. Because if the f-stop starts blinking, then I've got to raise the ISO to get them in balance with each other so that the f-stop will quit blinking for me. Okay. Who has a pop-up flash on the top of their camera?
I do.
Angie's got one. Lori's got one. Mary,
Yeah.
do you?
Yep, I have.
Yeah.
one.
Okay. Paula, you just listen. Okay. On this one. Okay. Okay. So pop your flash up. Pop your flash up. Okay. Pop your flash back down. I'm sorry. Pop your flash back down. Put your shutter speed on 500th of a second, please. With the flash pop down.
Okay.
Okay. 500th of a second.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Now pop your flash back up. And when you pop your flash up and you look through your viewfinder, do you see 500th of a second anymore?
No.
No. What do you see, Angie?
200.
200. Good. Lori?
Same.
Same thing. Mary?
Actually, I still see 500, but maybe I don't have it on then.
It looks like it's on. I saw the little orange dot. Okay. Yeah, I see the orange dot coming out. Okay. So what you've encountered is what's called flash sync speed. So Angie and Lori, if you all are going to use the pop-up flash, you cannot use a shutter speed faster than 250th of a second. So if you pop your flash down, you see that it'll let you go to 500th of a second, even though light meter's not balanced. If you
Yep.
pop your flash up, it'll only let you go to 250. That's called flash sync speed. Mary, yours went up to 500 and everything was still okay?
Yeah, mine. yeah,
Nothing's
didn't have-
blinking?
Nothing's blinking.
No, take a picture for me, would you, Mary? Everybody else not yet, but just Mary. Now look on the back of the camera. Did it look okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Rotate your shutter speed dial, Mary, until you can't go any further. How fast will it let you go? With the flash popped up.
1/2000th.
Okay. And it won't let you go any more than 1/2000.
Right.
Yeah. So that's where your sync speed is. So Paula, I suspect on yours that yours is 250 as well. And then we have to go to what's called a high-speed flash, top-mounted flash. So we'd have to go to a high-speed flash. So if you are going to use a flash, Angie, Mary and Angie and Laura, you all can do this. Put your shutter speed at 60th of a second and pop your flash up. And just pop your flash up, put your shutter speed at 60th of a second. Now just flash like your lamp. If the cat walks by, flash the cat. If the dog walks by, flash the dog. And you'll notice that the picture doesn't look too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's because that's called an ETTNL flash. Paula, if we put a top mounted flash on yours, we could set it to ETTNL. And this is where if we were walking through a party, we could wander around the room, use a 60th of a second, use the flash, and we could just use the flash to light people's faces up. And so this is where we could use shutter priority because we know we'd have to have about a 60th of a second to do that. Lori, somebody just walked in the room. Why don't you flash them with that flash and see what
Do
they
it.
look
Do
like?
it.
Yeah. see what it looks like. Yeah, because it's a fairly dark room and it should look fairly okay. That flash knows to go out, hit the closest subject that we focused on, turn off. So that's a very, very smart flash. And so it's called an ETTNL flash. And I'll talk about top mounted flashes in just a second for you all. So I don't ever want you to go into the program mode. You can pop your flashes down, okay? I don't ever want you to go into the program mode because all program mode is doing is it's an automated mode to put you at about 60th of a second shutter speed and about f8. Now, why would you go to 60th of a second shutter speed and f8? What's 60th of a second shutter speed do for you?
Lights up faces.
Lights up faces, or it stops faces, right?
Right.
And what's f8?
Focuses on everything. No.
Or most
It's
stuff.
eight objects. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's normal. It's average.
It's more stuff. So that's what your program mode does. 60th of a second, f8, stops most stuff, puts most stuff in focus. It doesn't look creative. It doesn't look artistic, but that's what it does. You're not going to ruin everything and it'll just do. And I know that in all your cameras, you all have other things like Angie's even got birthday candle mode. And, you know, there's, if you go to that
Night vision, yeah.
SCN on the screen here, they give you all kinds of stuff. Okay, these are just little stupid, hokey preset things, assuming you're never going to learn how to take pictures. So it's just the camera manufacturer assuming that you're too stupid to learn how to use the camera.
Yay,
Okay.
Nikon.
And that's why I don't want you to go into those modes, because between manual, aperture priority, and shutter priority, you can photograph anything from northern lights to the cat, to the grandkid, to the dog, to landscapes. And you don't need all that little hokey stuff. So you all know how to do it now, and you can do everything you need to do between manual, aperture priority, and shutter priority. Okay?
Yeah.
Questions before I leave that?
Nope.
Nope. And play around with it, kind of experiment with it, see how it goes. On your handout, that very first day when I sent you the handout saying, please set your camera on these things, I want to tell you why I had you set on those things. So this autofocus continuous, AFC for everybody, the continuous on your lens, continuous on your camera, continuous on your back display panel, or the CL, Angie, that's your Nikon, is the CL, or Lori, it's AI servo. Why I have you set on that autofocus continuous CL or AI servo is as long as you have your finger halfway down on the shutter, the focus point is going to constantly go out and hit your subject. So if your subject moves or you move, the focus point will constantly go back and hit your subject. So you'll even hear the lens kind of going. So that autofocus continuous means as long as you've got your finger halfway down on the shutter button, it's going to constantly refocus on your subject. You need this. The cat's going to move, the baby's going to move, the wildflower in front of you is going to move, the bird's going to move. You need that autofocus going back and constantly rehitting. Yeah, Paula.
So I'm in shutter priority mode, and
Uh-huh.
I don't see that.
If you look on your back display screen,
Oh.
pull it with your FN, you've got autofocus,
Okay, maybe,
C, AFC.
I see it. Yep.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
setting that you set on your camera.
Yep. I see it.
Okay.
I
So
remember
it,
setting it. I just didn't, when I looked in my viewfinder, I didn't see it.
yeah,
So,
you probably won't see anything. Now, the alternative, the opposite is AFS. Don't make any changes, but you just know it's there. Or single shot, Lori, for you on Canon. AFS. In this case, if you're on S or single shot, when you focus on the subject and you have your finger halfway down and you're waiting for the subject to turn and look right and smile and all that stuff, that camera had focused one point and it's still on that one point. If you moved and that one point is in space now, that camera's not going to refocus. If your subject moved and that point is still out there in space, the camera's not refocusing. So I don't want you in AFS because it only focuses one time and then you have to physically raise your button up, put your finger back down for it to refocus. If your camera has ever refused to take the picture, that's AFS. So if you've ever been pushing the shutter button and it won't take the picture for you, that's AFS. It will refuse to take the picture unless it thinks you're in focus. And I want it to take the picture even if I'm out of focus,
Yes.
if I want to. I mean, abominable snowman walking through, I want it to take the picture. So that AFC or continuous L in Nikons or AI servo, this is where we want to leave our camera set. The only time we would go into single, by the way, is if we were doing macro photography and we wouldn't want the camera to keep popping back and forth. We would want it to settle someplace, but we would have to be on tripod. Subject would have to be stationary. That's the only time we'd use that. Your rapid release, your 3 pieces of paper on top of each other. So Lori, on the back of your camera, you've actually got a little icon that shows you the 3 pieces of paper. Everybody else in your menus, you've got those 3 pieces of paper. Those 3 pieces of paper on top of each other mean that if we hold the button down, the camera will just keep taking pictures until we raise our finger up. And this is what we want when the kids are doing something cute, or we're photographing sports, or we're photographing birds. And then if we have the ability to do the the 3 pieces of paper with the H, that's when the camera is firing as fast as it possibly will. So this is when if we hold the button down, we might get 7 frames a second or 14 frames a second. And this is what we would do if the kid were going off the diving board in a diving competition, or a bird were flying, or we're photographing some sort of sporting event. This would be the high speed. But we might, in a camera like Paula's got, you might get 30 or 40 pictures in a second if you're not careful. And that's a lot of pictures to edit on the back end of it. But it means that we're going to get the shot. So that's where that 3 pieces of paper with the H is.
I don't know where to find that on the back of this camera.
Okay, you know where you saw the 3 pieces of paper in your menu? It's probably your drive mode, what's called your drive mode.
Okay, drive mode.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Oh,
then
I see it.
also,
Yeah. So I want to be in continuous. I have low 10 seconds. I don't
yeah, you don't want the 10 seconds as your timer.
know. Okay.
Yeah. So you want to be in low most of the time, unless you were doing something like birds or sports or action.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then the one individual focus point, we've got the ability on Angie and Lori's camera to have all the focus points activated or just one. Most of the time I'm shooting with just one. But if I were working on something like flying airplanes or flying birds, then I might have everybody activated. And then Paula, in yours, you have the ability to have all of them activated, only some of them activated, some of them in the middle, some of them at the side, some of them at the other side. So when we get into other cameras, we have a lot of different options, but otherwise I just use one little focus point and I put it where I need it to be.
Yeah, I have mine on center right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, yeah. And notice also, Paula, you have a little joystick on the back of your camera up at the top where your thumb is, right-hand thumb. So that allows you to move your focus point around the frame. So so we got some neat features in some of these cameras.
3D tracking, it says 11 points. Is
Yeah,
that-
3D tracking, you know, it's like, don't trust it.
Yeah, okay, that's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Put your focus point where you need it to be. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So now you can put your cameras down for just a second. So there's this thing called flat to the film plane. Flat to the film plane. Now we don't have film anymore, but we do have a sensor. And what that means is that if this hand over here is the camera and this hand is the subject, the sensor, the flat area in the back of the camera, the depth of field is absolutely parallel to that flat area on the back of the camera where the film used to be, but the sensor is now. If you tilt the camera, the depth of field is going to tilt. If you tilt the camera, the depth of field is going to tilt. If you tilt the camera, the depth of field is going to tilt. So to maximize your depth of field, especially like you see on this canna lily, if you want to maximize that shallow depth of field, only two things are in focus, f2 or, you know, a shallow depth of field, then you need to keep the back of the camera absolutely parallel to those water droplets. So this is flat to the film plane. So if we want to maximize the depth of field, we want to keep the camera absolutely parallel to the owl-eye butterfly, antennas, feet, wings, so that we can blow out the background, but not change the depth of field on the subject. So for instance, on this caiman down in the Pantanal in Brazil, this is an f10, which gives you a lot of depth of field. But with this telephoto lens, we don't really have that much depth of field at an f10. We've only got about like that. So if I focus on his nose, you see that just back to that big tooth is in focus. So that's an f10. But if I pull the boat up on the side and get absolutely parallel to that caiman, now my f10 looks like have a lot of depth of field. It's the same f10, but it's just simply getting flat to the film plane versus not flat to the film plane. So when you want to maximize a shallow depth of field, we want to make sure that we're absolutely parallel to our subject. So like that vase that Paula was working on with the reflector, if you make sure that that camera is absolutely parallel to that vase, then we're going to maximize our depth of field. Make sense?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but usually, you know, they don't pose quite that pretty for you.
Well, you know, he wasn't going anywhere. Okay. So this is the tripod I recommend that you buy. This is a MePhoto Globetrotter classic carbon fiber tripod. It's made by the MePhoto people. It costs $319. You can buy it at Best Buy. You can buy it online. And it's the classic carbon fiber. They have another version of carbon fiber. They have another version of titanium or something like that, but you want the classic carbon fiber. The neat thing about this tripod is it weighs 3.5 pounds, but it will hold your heaviest lens. It folds up to about 3 feet long. So it folds up to about like this, you know. And if you fold it all the way up, it folds up even smaller. and it weighs about 3 pounds. So it's a lightweight, sturdy tripod, easy to operate, easy to manipulate. And on top of that, it comes with the ball head on top. You can see that ball head on top, and you can see, move me out of the way if you need to, but you can see that there's also what's called an Arca Swiss plate up at the top. That plate, you undo it from the little holder, you screw it onto the bottom of your camera, and you leave it there. You don't take it off. That, Lori, that long lens that you have, you screw it onto the tripod mount of that long lens so that you can put the lens on the tripod and it stays in balance.
Oh, okay.
So this tripod just has everything that you need in the quality that you need it. And that's the reason I recommend it. Years ago, when MePhoto sent it to me and asked me to try it out, I just told them, oh no, I only use expensive tripods. My expensive tripod is in the garage. And this is the only one that I use. The beautiful thing about this one too is it comes in a variety of colors. I'm showing you silver, but mine is green. They have a blue one, they have an orange one, they have a yellow one, they have a pink one, they have a red one. And periodically they come out with different colors. And so they've got good customer service, just a good company all the way around, nice and sturdy. So that's the tripod you need to buy. Okay. And you do need a tripod because you've seen it already, trying to work on some of this stuff and trying to do macro photography or things like that. You really do definitely need a tripod. Questions? No? Okay. So lenses, what you've got to realize in photography is that the engineers at these camera companies don't make lenses just for the heck of it. They make lenses because each one of them is a tool, and you buy a lens because you need it. You don't buy a lens because your friend owns it. You buy a lens because you need it. So this, for instance, is a 15 to 35 RF lens, one of the newer ones that Canon's got. You see that starburst on the street lamps? That's one of the marks of this lens that gives you these absolutely beautiful starbursts. And this lens is one of the high quality, expensive lenses that Canon makes. They also make a 14 to 35, has an equally beautiful starburst on it. But this 14 to 35, and notice this 15 to 35, you see how they look like they're very similar, and they both cost $1,200. So why do you buy one over the other? This lens keeps buildings straight, where this lens we could use in landscapes where we don't have to worry about buildings curving in. In this case, this lighthouse is kind of leaning over, and we know the lighthouse isn't leaning over. So this lens, the 14 to 35, would be used for landscape photography, but the 15 to 35 would be used for architectural photography. So we have to ask why a lens was created and what's it used for. This is a 10 to 22 Tokina lens, and you see that it doesn't just lean buildings in, it curves.
It's like a fisheye, kind of?
It's kind of a mini fisheye, yes. But if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't think that it really did this as much. So it gets a lot of curves in there. So you have to know why you're buying the lens and what it's being used for. So I always recommend before you buy a lens that you rent it. The same thing with new cameras. Before you buy a camera, rent it first. There's all kinds of rental places. In Houston, we have Photo Rental Source. Paula, up in your area in Massachusetts, you've got a fairly good number of rental places up there as well. So rent a lens or rent a camera before you buy it, just to see whether this really is what you're looking for. So these wide angle lenses, we use these for landscape photography. So in this case, we also don't just shoot them straight up and down, we tilt them to exaggerate. So by exaggerating the sky in this photo of Tanzania, I'm tilting the camera back, and it's making the sky appear bigger and more grand than what it is. I'm also using a software called Nik, N-I-K, to enhance those storm clouds just a little bit and bring them out. Same lens, but one of the beautiful things about this lens is I could put it down in the bluebonnet field, and then I can focus very close because it's got a very close focusing distance, and I can see the whole expanse of the bluebonnet field. So we
What's
use,
the,
yeah.
what's the number on that? That one doesn't show, what's the numbers on that?
Oh, so this is a 14 to 35 also.
Same
Yes,
one? Okay.
yes. And, once again, done it at a 22 or a 32, something like that. This is a little bitty slideshow of every lens I could get my hands on one day, from 500 to 10. And you can see that as it progresses through, once we start getting into the telephoto at 5, I can see the building, but watch 10, I can't even see the building off in the distance. So watch as we get in there, his 50, 300, 500, and watch 10, I can't even see the building back there. So some of these wide angle lenses are designed to not even let you see the background. So, or see the mountains in the background. So you would have to have some really tall mountains to be able to see them in the background. So just realize that every lens has its own construction. Every lens is designed for a certain reason. And maybe you borrow a lens or rent a lens before you actually buy it.
How
Okay.
good is the literature in explaining that this is the convex fisheye one? This is they're not good? Okay.
No, they're not. They're not at all. And it in fact, with the two lenses that I showed you, the 14 to 35 and the 15 to 35, I own them both. One came out first and one came out second. They're not really good at explaining. And it wasn't until I actually started using them that I realized, oh, okay, that's what this lens is for. And that's what this lens is for. But no, nowhere in the literature does it say that.
Well, that is good to know.
Yes.
Unfortunate, but good to know.
It's unfortunate, but it's good to know. Exactly. So trying to figure out exactly why do you need this? If you're ever in the market for equipment and you want to shoot me an email, I will gladly help you out. I would rather see you buy the right thing the first go around than spend your money over and over and over again. So, not always paying attention to what the person at the camera store is telling you, but what you really need. And that just takes some time. Unfortunately, it just takes some time. But I want to show you what's called bokeh, and just once again, the lens construction. This is that 18 to 55 millimeter lens. Angie and Lori, y'all both have this, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. This usually this is your first lens that comes with a camera in the box. This is your beginner lens. I'm going to zoom it to 55 millimeters, and I'm going to use f4. And you see the background, the blown out background. This is just looking out of my office window at the street down below. And you can see that you can kind of see the screen in there. It's pretty well blown out. That's called the bokeh. But if I use a 50 millimeter lens, no zoom, f4, you notice that it has that prettier, smoother bokeh to it. And that's because, once again, this lens is designed to have that beautiful blown out background. And as we were talking about, whoa, I'm reverberating somewhere. So that's what this lens is designed to have. But if I use the 70 to 200 millimeter professional lens from Canon, $1,200 lens, f4, now look at the background. So you see the difference in the quality of the background. So the cheaper lens is not going to blur out as well as the more expensive lens. And unfortunately, in photography, the more you pay, usually the better it is. That's just the way it works. Realize that there is a lot of used equipment out there. And so you don't always have to buy new, because there's some good used equipment out there. And a good used lens is going to be good for another 20 years. So don't feel like you always have to buy new.
Do you have to buy a lens that's like for this, since I'm using a Sony camera, would I buy a Sony lens?
Yes.
Am I
Yes.
limited to that?
Yes. Yes. You don't have to, but I'm going to tell you from experience that if you use Nikon lenses on Nikon cameras, Canon lenses on Canon cameras, Sony lenses on Sony cameras, all the electronics is going to function a whole lot better. So yes, there are Tamron lenses and there are Sigma lenses and there's different lenses out there, but you're always going to get a better result with your camera manufacturer's lens.
So the camera that the son-in-law lent me, it has a FE4/24 to 105.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
what, is this a wide angle lens?
That 24 to 105 is my favorite lens, and it's what I call a walk around lens. I could walk around Europe with this lens. I could walk around the botanical gardens with this lens. I could walk around a party with this lens. That 24 to 105 to me is just like the perfect lens.
But
You know,
not for birds.
not for
But
birds. No.
not for birds.
But I could go to the farmer's market with it. I could go flower photography with it. It's just a great lens. But no, it's a good general all around lens.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a good starting lens, but not for birds. Your birds are going to be your 100 to 500s, your 80 to 400s. That's going to be your bird lens. Yes. So what's that one, Angie?
It's a 70 to 300 millimeter. Says 4.5 to 6.3 G.
Yeah. So it's a 70 to 300. So that's kind of the basic. That's the kids' basketball game. That's the kids' soccer game. That's dragonflies, butterflies, the beginning of birds, but really we need more in the 400 to 600 range for birds.
Okay. Yep.
So the flash, I mentioned the flash, and the top mounted flash is always going to give you the better results than the pop-up flash. The top mounted flash is always going to go further. It's going to be more powerful. It's got more additional features with it. Notice the dense hard shadow on the ground next to the architectural structure this lady's standing next to. You see what a harsh shadow that is? The flash has gotten rid of the shadow on her face, but you don't notice that she's been flashed. And that's because we've set this Canon 430EX2 flash on ETTNL, just like your pop-up flash. Wherever I focus, that's where the light's going to go, and then the light's going to turn off. You're telling the camera, the flash, you don't have to light up the whole scene. I just want you to go to where I focus, hit it, and turn off. So that's called ETTNL flash, electronic through the lens metering. It reads the telephoto distance on your lens. It reads the f-stop and the shutter speed. It knows how far you focused. So it's a super smart subject. Very, very smart. Angie on your camera, Paula on your camera, Mary on your camera, you have to go into your flash setting. That's the little lightning bolt on your icons on the back of the camera, on the display panel. And you have to set it to slow or rear. Otherwise, the flash is dominant.
Okay.
So you either push your flash controller button, and Lori, you don't have to do this. So you can just push your flash controller button, Angie, on right up there that pops up your flash. And on the back of your camera, you can then rotate your dial to slow or rear. And now your top mounted flash will behave like I just explained it to you.
Okay.
Okay. Mary, you see it? Paula, you see it?
I don't have a flash. So
Right, but you have a flash controller.
I'm sorry,
so-
so could you say again?
So on that bar of menu items that you've got when you do the FN button, one of them shows a little lightning bolt.
Hold on, got the wrong information up here.
Yeah. So you know that FN button, and then you've got that bar of icons. One of those shows a flash.
Mhm.
And then you have to go to rear or slow. And that just tells the flash, don't be dominant, just play well and be subordinate. And then you just leave it set like that.
So if you
Okay.
have both rear and slow, which one would be better?
Slow.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes you've got both of them. Yeah. And then that doesn't do anything except make your flash subordinate, not dominant. That's all that that's doing.
Yeah, I see slow or rear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So put it on slow. Mhm. So yeah, Angie, you're muted.
Sorry. I have an eyeball. Because I and then I have slow and then I have slow rear.
So do slow.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So you see in this little guy at the wedding that you can't tell I've used a flash on him. You see that? So there's nothing that says I've flashed this guy, but that TTNL flash just gives me that little kiss of light. So it's just a little bit of brightness on him, but you don't really notice it. And then you notice also that by positioning him with some colored lights behind him, it makes the photo look a whole lot more interesting. And you see the shallow depth of field and everything. So if we can position our subject with the human subject with those lights behind them, then that allows us to bring out just a little bit more, having that background that has some little bit of light in it. That TTNL also helps us when, you know how I showed you all just now on shutter priority to put the shutter speed at 60th of a second. So this is a genet. It's a type of a mongoose in Tanzania, and it comes out at night out of the rafters in the restaurant and one of the lodges where we stay, and it feeds on the rodents that are up in the rafters, you know, in the thatching. But I'm not going to not photograph this guy. This guy's too cool. You know, I'm going to photograph this. So this is, we're inside, we're in a restaurant. It's like it is in your room right now. We don't have enough shutter speed to photograph it and stop it. So I'm going to go into shutter priority. I'm going to set my shutter speed on 60th of a second, just like we were doing just a little bit ago. Pop up flash or use the top mounted flash. And then I'm going to get my photos of him. So the neat thing about a flash is it just allows us to have such versatility. You can do the same thing outside, put your subject against some of those lighted trees that we've got all over the cities now. Use the 60th of a second pop-up flash or the big top mounted flash, 60th of a second. And now the flash just goes out, hits the subject, turns off, but I can get that background lit up. So it's not just a subject in a dark background. So the flash is a really nice, versatile flash. Also, should the flash be for your camera manufacturer? Yes. So if you're going to buy a flash, buy a Nikon flash, buy a Canon flash, or buy a Sony flash, because this is very complex electronics that has to be absolutely precise. And so, yes, you need the flash made by your camera manufacturer. Your flash also does some fun stuff. So here's the Cadillac Ranch up in Amarillo, and I was photographing it for the book Gary and I wrote, Backroads of Texas. And it happened on the day that I was up there was a cold winter day and with snow flurries. It was disgusting looking. But when I flashed the dog, the flash went all through the cars and lit up the metallic paint on the cars. So once I saw that the flash was going to light up the metallic paint on the cars, then that just made it fun because I just walked all over this place flashing like crazy because all that paint on those cars, that years and years of paint, was just going to sparkle right back at me using the flash. So the flash gives you the ability to light stuff up, and it's just a handy gadget to have. I told you all in your handout about the reflector, and Paula, you already tried that. Did you try a reflector, Paula, or did you use cardboard covered with aluminum foil?
I used cardboard covered with aluminum foil.
Okay, that's good. That's good. And by the way, you can use silver aluminum foil. You can use gold metallic wrapping paper. You can use red wrapping paper. It's going to reflect that color back. And in this lady, we've put the reflector down lower left, and the window is over at upper right. So the window is up above her, and then the reflector is reflecting the sunlight back up on her face. So the reflector is a really, really nice, soft light source. And the one that I like to use is this 5-in-1 reflector. Costs $29. Amazon, have it to you in just 2 days. It folds up into a little bitty disc, and that goes into the case, and then you can store it in your camera bag. So you're only going to use it when you need it. Silver on one side, gold on the other side. Gold gives you more of a golden light. Silver gives you a more silver light. And then the center disc there is a diffuser in the event that you have too much light on your flower or on your snail out in the garden, and you need to hold it between that and the sun to cut the shadow.
On
So
the photo that you showed us with the lady, the previous slide, was there a flash? Were you using a flash also, or no? Okay,
No.
okay.
Mhm. Yeah. Angie's echoing. I hope I'm not echoing for you all. Am I?
Mm-mm.
You're not echoing for me. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah,
That's
it's just
okay.
Angie that.
Just
that we
Angie.
could-
Okay.
yeah.
I just want to make sure you all are.
Sorry, I'm in the country.
I just want to make sure you all aren't having to listen to me doing that. Okay. So here, for instance, is over on the left, you see those shadows. The flash can't cut through these shadows anymore. We are dealing with intense shadows. But if I put the reflector lower left, reflecting sunlight onto her back and onto her face, now the reflector cuts through that shadows and the flash can cut through a little bit more. So you see how much that reflector can add light. So it's a gadget you may not use every day, but if I'm walking through a garden and I'm photographing flowers in the garden, this reflector is a beautiful source of light to have. And at $29, you can use it when you want to and not use it when you don't want to.
Are you holding it in your hand while you're taking a
It's
picture?
leaning on something.
Okay.
So if I'm in the garden, I can hold it. But in this case, we've got it propped up on a nearby wall.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you need an assistant to hold it for you. Yeah. And the one that I have, by the way, is about this big. It's, I think, 24-inch. There's a huge one. Don't get that much. It just blows in the wind. And don't get a teeny one. It doesn't do you any good. Get the one that's about 24 inches. Okay. Questions for me?
So I take it that because all your lenses were Canon, that you are a Canon person with a Canon camera?
I am a Canon person with a Canon camera. I was Nikon for 15 years. And then when I went to autofocus cameras in 2002, I went to Canon simply because I could buy more equipment with this pile of money I had. It was one time in my life when I had a pile of money. So I went with Canon. And then when I switched to mirrorless in 2020 during COVID, I almost went to Sony because Canon wasn't releasing their equipment fast enough. And it turned out that the day I was ready to switch to Sony, Canon released a bunch of equipment. So I didn't go to Sony. So I'm back at Canon. So I'm still in Canon. But I respect all of them. Canon, Nikon, Sony, they're just the absolute best out there. Yeah. And you got to buy the one that works for you. So Paula, you're going to be shopping for equipment. And so somebody in your family already has Sony. That's not a bad reason to go Sony. But also if you had never touched and held a camera before, it helps to actually hold them to see whether those controls make sense for your hands and whether they make sense for your brain. It's the ergonomics of a camera and it's the ergonomics of its controls for your brain.
Well, until my daughter signed me up for this class, I hadn't really done any photography other than with my cell phone. So when I said to her, I need a real camera to take this class, she said, okay, I'll ask Jim, And, you know, he sent me this. So right now he's letting me borrow it. And I think he has another, he's a kind of a camera buff.
Uh-huh.
So maybe I'll get lucky and he'll let me borrow this, you know, from a more extended period.
That would be really good. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had to read the manual, watch a few YouTube videos before last week so that I even knew how to turn the darn thing on. But it's been a wonderful experience learning this.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, it just takes diving in there. Angie.
Your workshops, I'm sorry if I'm echoing, I apologize, but these Texas Hill Country, I'm in the Houston area, that would be fun. How do I get more information on those?
If you just send me an email, I'll send you a brochure. Mhm.
Perfect.
Yeah. So this weekend, for instance, Paula, you're too far away, but I've got a class out at the Katy Prairie on prairie photography. It's only a 2.5 hour class. It's just a walk around, good chance to get to you know, ask some questions, that type of stuff. If you ever want to travel with me out of the country, I do about 5 to 6 photo tours a year. Costa Rica's full. Tanzania still has room. Pantanal for the jaguars in Brazil and the birds, amazing in Pantanal. Puglia is Italy. It's just culture. So we are just drinking wine and eating good food and walking around in historic villages. And then Costa Rica in November is back for birds. So I kind of do a flip flop between culture and birds. And then the weekend workshops, Texas Hill Country birds, I do those 3 or 4 times a year also. August is hummingbirds and April is the painted buntings.
So where in the Texas Hill Country, where are you going?
So we're in between, I'm going to a private ranch that's run by a photographer, and we're in between Comfort and Fredericksburg.
Okay.
Lovely place.
And you spend there for the weekend then?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You just park your car and the driveway, and we don't have to get in our car for the whole, from Thursday to Sunday after Sunday morning. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's
So
lovely.
she feeds us, she puts us up in the little houses around the ranch. It's a lovely, lovely place. I love it.
Isn't one of the state parks close to Comfort that has a great bird blind? Is that close to Comfort?
It's Pedernales. Uh-huh.
Well, I've been to Pedernales, but I think there was another one that was closer to Comfort, but maybe not.
And yeah, there's a couple in that area. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Llano River.
The Llano
Junction.
River one, I
Yeah.
was thinking. The Pedernales one is lovely.
Yeah. These have photo blinds, but since it's run by a photographer, then they're really good photo blinds, you know, with no obstructions and that type of stuff. And then here's all my contact information. You all can email me anytime you want to. And you know, I've got all kinds of stuff on my blog, all kinds of stuff on my YouTube channel. So there's years and years and years of information on those. Photographing the eclipse coming up, for instance, is on the blog. So all kinds of stuff coming up. And anytime you've got a question, feel free to ask me. If I'm around, I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And then my classes are all on my website. So take more. You can't learn it in one sitting. Takes more. Yeah. And then, by the way, those of you that are close to this area, we have Featherfest coming up in April, and that's the bird photography festival. So I'll be teaching about 5 or 6 different workshops at that place. Paula, if you want to come down, it's in
I'm
Galveston.
coming down in April.
Oh, good. Yeah.
I'm coming down for after Easter for a couple of weeks. I don't know the exact dates, but my daughter sent me something about Featherfest, so I don't
Very
know.
good. Very good. Well, I'm teaching, so I'm there. So you just remind me where we know each other from. Yeah,
Okay.
that's good. Okay, guys, any questions?
Thank you for sharing all of this information.
thank
I've
you.
learned so much. Your photos are amazing, by the way.
Thank you very
I
much.
enjoyed looking at so much fun.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I had absolutely no idea what I could learn online with different cameras. I didn't know if this was going to be 30 people in the class or 5. I had no
Yes.
idea. You know, I'm like, well, it's only 75. You know, if I waste it, I waste it, right? But it was well worth the money and more than I had anticipated.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
I
Thank you.
learned,
Yeah.
I learned a
I
lot.
try not to get the group too big. And you see, even something like this that was pretty complicated, you all did it. So I'm proud of you. You did your homework. Y'all did it. You didn't say I can't. So I'm proud of you. You did it. Yeah. So come on back, take more classes. Let's get to know each other a whole lot better. And then, when we meet face to face, then we'll feel like we absolutely know each other. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Good night. Remember,
Kathy,
you have, let me see, where are we? Stop sharing. There we go. Remember, you have the recording tomorrow. So I'll share the recording with you tomorrow. And I hope we see each other again sometime soon. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Okay. And Lori, get better. Mary, hope your mom's
Yeah,
feeling
yeah.
better. Okay. Everybody get better. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.